You have been staring at that laptop for hours, Jungkook. I think even the screen is tired of you. Her tone was light, teasing the kind of softness she used to draw laughter from him once upon a time. But tonight, his only response was the quiet clatter of the keyboard. Jungkook didn't even glance up. His glasses caught the golden light as his fingers kept moving. Methodical, precise, emotionless. The screen doesn't complain, unlike some people. The words sliced through the air, coated in calm indifference. One smiled faintly, not because it was funny, but because it hurt. She had grown used to this version of him, the one who looked at her but never really saw her anymore. Still, she walked toward him, barefoot, her silk robe whispering against the marble floor, the scent of her jasmine perfume mingled with his calling, that lingering, expensive kind that once made her weak in the knees. She stopped beside him, tilting her head. You need a break, you will ruin your eyes. He finally looked up, slow, deliberate. That gaze of his sharp and unreadable lingered on her face. Don't stare too long, Mrs. Joan, he murmured, lips curving in that faint, prideful smirk. You might fall harder. Her breath caught and she looked away, pretending to fix the papers on his desk. You say that like I haven't already fallen enough. His smirk faltered for a heartbeat, just a flicker before he masked it with cold amusement. He leaned back in his chair, watching her with the detached curiosity of a man trying not to care. The truth was, he did. He noticed everything. How she bite the inside of her cheek when she was nervous, how she kept tucking her hair behind her ear even when it didn't need fixing. He just refused to admit any of it. She moved to the counter, pouring him a fresh cup of coffee, black, no sugar, just the way he liked. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. When she brought it to him, he took it without meeting her eyes. Thanks. The word was flat, obligatory, but she smiled anyway. You are welcome. Then silence again. Only the soft hum of the city below and the faint sound of his pen scratching against paper. She stood by the window looking out at the skyline, a million lights shining, none of them warm. He wasn't always like this, she thought. There was a time he had come up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, whispered something teasing against her neck. Now, even when he brushed past her, it was careful, distant, as though closeness was a luxury he could no longer afford. Jungkook's gaze flicked to her reflection in the window. Soft, thoughtful, heartbreakingly beautiful. He didn't understand why looking at her made his chest tighten and his jaw clench at the same time. He told himself he was just tired, that her softness made him weak, that love was a distraction he couldn't afford. And yet he couldn't look away. Wine turned, catching him staring. Her voice was gentle, barely above a whisper. You used to tell me everything, now I don't even know what kind of day you have had. He set his pen down slowly because it's better that way. Feelings complicate things. Then I guess I'm the complication or not I? The question hung in the air, fragile, trembling. He looked at her for a long time, eyes unreadable, and for a fleeting moment something in them softened like a storm pausing before the first thunder. You were never supposed to be. She smiled, the kind that hurt more than crying. Then maybe I was supposed to teach you that complications can be beautiful. He didn't reply, just watched her walk past him graceful, wounded, glowing faintly in the lamplight. His hand twitched as if he wanted to reach out to stop her, to say something, but pride kept him still. When she disappeared into their bedroom, he finally let out a long breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked down at his coffee untouched, already cold, and for the first time that night he couldn't focus on a single word on the page in front of him. Late morning, Joan Enterprises, the glass tower that mirrored Jungkook's perfection, the boardroom buzzed quietly with restrained power. His executives waited polished and precise, papers stacked neatly before them. One stepped inside, her soft heels clicking gently against the floor. She wasn't supposed to be here, she knew that, but Jungkook had skipped breakfast again. And she couldn't ignore the instinct that still whispered he hasn't eaten. Balancing a tray of coffee and pastries, she walked toward him, her smile small but sincere. The moment her eyes met his, she saw it, that faint flicker of surprise, quickly hidden beneath cold composure. Wine, he said under his breath, a warning disguised as her name. You have been working since dawn, she said softly, setting the tray on the table. I thought you could use a break. A few polite smiles spread among the employees, but Chunguk's jaw tightened. He hated displays of affection in front of others, not because he didn't like them, but because they made him feel. She leaned closer, whispering, just coffee, Chunguk, you don't have to glare at me like I broke the law. That almost earned a smirk from him, almost. But as she poured the coffee, her hand slightly trembled, the cup slipped. It wasn't much, just a small spill, but it was enough. Hot coffee spread across the polished table and onto the one document he had spent all night perfecting. A silence heavier than glass filled the room. Jungkook froze. His pen stopped midair. For a second, no one moved. Then his voice came, low, sharp, and terrifyingly calm. Can you be careful for once, Vine? Her breath hissed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. He cut her off, still not looking at her. You have done enough damage today. The sound of his words echoed in the room. Every pair of eyes darted away, pretending to focus on their notes, the wall, anything but her. Her fingers fumbled for tissues, trying to dab at the file, but he took it from her hand not harshly but coldly, deliberately, like she was a stranger. Jungkook, please, I'll fix it. Just go. He raised his voice. The absence of warmth in it was worse. Wine blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears pretending to spill. Her vision blurred as she whispered, I was only trying to help, but he was already speaking to his team, his tone smooth, businesslike, as though she had never been there. She stood for a moment, frozen, clutching the tray like a shield, then quietly she turned and walked out, each step heavier than the last. When the door closed behind her, Chunguk's hand clenched into a fist. His throat burned regret, anger, shame, but pride swallowed it all. He wanted to call her back to stay. I didn't mean it. But his pride whispered, you are June Jungkook. You don't apologize in front of people. So he didn't. The rain had started by the time they left the office. The world outside blurred into streaks of grey and city light. Inside the car, silence was suffocating. Jungkook drove, one hand on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. One sat beside him, her hands clasped in her lap, her engagement ring glinting faintly under the streetlights. The hum of the rain filled the void between them. One finally spoke, voice soft, fragile but steady. Did you even realize how you spoke to me? Jungkook didn't look at her, his jaw flexed once, then again. It was a mistake. She almost smiled bitterly. Calling me careless vendor of your employees? That kind of mistake. He exhaled, still not turning toward her. So was bringing that coffee near my file? The words hung in the air like frost. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to let the tears fall. She turned her face toward the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. For a while, he said nothing. He wanted to reach for her hand, to tell her it wasn't about the file, that it was about everything he couldn't say, the stress, the fear of losing control, the ache he didn't understand, but all that came out was silence. Wine whispered, "You didn't even look at me when I apologized." His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his voice low, because if I did, I might have said something I couldn't take back. She turned, surprised. For the first time that night, she saw something behind his eyes, not anger, but exhaustion, maybe even regret. But just as quickly he looked away, the armor slipped back into place. They drove the rest of the way home without another word. The sound of rain was the only witness to everything they didn't say. When they finally stopped in front of their penthouse, she didn't move immediately. She stared straight ahead, voice barely above a whisper. "You can't keep pretending this is normal, Jungkook." He didn't answer. He couldn't. So she opened the door, stepped out into the rain, and walked ahead, her figure fading into the mist of the city night. And for the first time in a long time, Jungkook didn't follow. The next morning, the penthouse was too quiet. The air felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Wine stood by the window, suitcase beside her. The city outside was painted gold by the rising sun, but inside her everything felt grey. She looked around one last time, the marble counters, the faint trace of his calling, the mug she always used for his morning coffee. It was all still there. But the warmth was gone. Her fingers lingered on the ring he gave her. For a moment, she considered taking it off, but then she slipped it back, whispering to herself, "Not yet." The door behind her creaked slightly. She turned, but it was only the wind. He hadn't come home last night. He had stayed at the office, or maybe in his car, anywhere but beside her. She wrote a small note on the counter, no explanations, no anger, just silence put into words. "I'm going home for a while. Don't worry, I'll be fine." She hesitated before adding one more line, softer, almost invisible. "Maybe space is the only thing that can remind us what closeness felt like." She placed the note beside his untouched mug and walked out. No dramatic slamming of doors, just the quiet click of goodbye. Her parents' home smelled of rain and jasmine, the scent of simpler times. When her mother opened the door, Wine didn't have to say anything. The older women just pulled her into a hug, whispering, "You don't have to explain." That night, Wine lay on her old bed, the same one she used to dream in when she was a teenager. The ceiling looked smaller now, but her heart felt strongly lighter. Still, when the rain started again, her thoughts drifted back to him, to the way his voice softened when he was half asleep, to how he always adjusted her seatbelt without saying a word. She reached for her phone. His chat was still pinned. No new messages, just the last one from days ago. "Don't stay up late." She stared at it for a long time before locking her phone. Every night after that, she didn't text. But every night she checked if he was online. She didn't know that at the same time across the city, he was doing the exact same thing. The penthouse had never felt so silent. Chungkook stood in the doorway, the city lights spilling faintly across the floor. Her shoes were gone. Her perfume, the one she always wore, had faded into the air. He walked into the kitchen. The coffee machine blinked in standby mode, and beside it lay her note. He read it once, then twice, and for the first time in years, something inside him cracked open. He picked up her mug, the one she always used, the one with the tiny chip near the handle. He stared at it as if it held answers, then he placed it back carefully like it was something fragile like her. The coffee stain file still sat on his desk. He touched the corner of it. The stain had faded, but the paper still wrinkled where it had dried. It felt meaningless now. All the numbers, all the deals, none of it filled the echo she left behind. He sank into the leather chair, eyes burning as memories replayed her laugh echoing in the kitchen, her humming when she watered the plants the way she always said goodnight even when he didn't answer, when their silence become easier than love. He leaned back, covering his face with his hand, whispering to no one, "You were right, I don't talk, I just destroy." His phone buzzed a message from his assistant reminding him of a meeting. He stared at it blankly, then locked the screen. Instead, he opened a chat, her name glowing softly at the top. He typed a message, "Are you okay?" He stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. His thumb hovered over her profile picture. She looked happy in it, that faint smile that used to be his favorite sight in the world. That's when he noticed her last scene, 2:37 a.m. He checked again at 3:12, then again at 3:59. He never sent the message. But every night he looked quietly, desperately, waiting for that little online to appear again. 1 week later, he found another note. It wasn't new. She had left it tucked inside his planner. Her handwriting was soft, elegant, and it carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. "I didn't leave because you shouted. I left because you stopped talking." He read it over and over until the ink blurred through his tears. Then, for the first time in years, Jung put his head down on his desk and let himself break. It happened on an ordinary Thursday, the kind of day that made Jungkook believe nothing could surprise him anymore until he saw her. He had stepped into an art gallery downtown, an event his client was hosting, oil glass and candlelight and low music. The place smelled faintly of rain and old paint. He was scanning a portfolio when the sound of laughter drifted across the room. Soft, familiar. His word stopped moving for a beat. Wine stood near a painting. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, and there was color in her cheeks, something he hadn't seen in months. She looked peaceful, untouched by his absence. And then she smiled, that smile gentle, bright, entirely. Her hit him harder than any confrontation could have. He felt it, the tightening in his chest, the quiet sting behind his ribs. That smile used to belong to him. He took a slow step forward before he realized what he was doing. For a moment, he almost called her name, but the sound caught in his throat. She turned, maybe sensing it, and their eyes met. Time didn't stop, it stretched. Her expression faltered just slightly, the corners of her lips dipping in surprise. Then she composed herself, offering the polite kind of smile you give to an acquaintance. The kind that said, "I remembered you, but I have learned how to live without you." She walked toward him with that calm grace he had always admired. "Mr. Joan," she said softly, voice professional distant. "Didn't expect to see you here." Jungkook forced a small smile, trying not to let the tremor show. "I could say the same, Mrs. Joan." Her breath hissed at the title, he noticed. She laughed lightly, through her fingers toyed with the edge of her clutch. "You still remember that?" Some things don't fade that easily. The silence that followed wasn't cold. This time it was charged, fragile, filled with everything they hadn't said. She looked at him, then really looked. He looked older somehow, more tired. The arrogance was still there, but it felt cracked human. "You seem well," she murmured, eyes searching his. "I'm not," he admitted before he could stop himself. Her lips parted, surprise flashing across her face. He took a breath, lowering his voice. "You're smiling again." "I learned to," she whispered. "You taught me the hard way." He nodded slowly, eyes dropping to the floor. "And did you learn to forget me too?" For a moment, she didn't answer, then quietly, "No, but I learned not to wait." That was it. The final thread snapping between them, soft but definite. The gallery lights shimmered against the glass walls, reflections bending around them like ghosts of their past. He wanted to ask her to come back, to tell her he had changed, but her smile told him she didn't need saving anymore. When her friend called her name from across the room, she gave him one last look, gentle, forgiving, distant. Goodbye, Jungkook. He watched her walk away through the crowd, her laughter blending with the music again. He didn't follow. He just stood there, hands trembling slightly in his pockets, whispering to himself, "It was never goodbye for me." Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, steady, and endless, like the echo of everything they had lost and everything they might still find someday.